All right. How am I? Like everyone on the regulatory committee today. I'll ask for apologies. We've got one council level problem. We're about to get better at the moment. Don't think there's anybody else want to move.
Have to move.
Be nice. Just get it. All in favour, say aye. It's carried. Declarations of interest.
Yes.
Was it? Yeah, Alistair has a.
No, but I can't be involved with the irrigation.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
It's a clear item, isn't it?
And again, the
Hearing.
plan change 5 discussions, anything that comes up.
Okay, so Julie, no, those two. To my knowledge, we've got no public forum petitions. Confirmation in minutes. Someone was able to confirm those from last meeting that was here. Oh, actually, I do have one. I see I must have been here, but I'm not in present. I might know, yeah, just throw my name in there. Apologies, so I must have been.
I'll move subject to that.
Yep.
Yeah, second that. Next one, you, Alistair, all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. But no notification of extraordinary items, no questions that I know of. The councillor chairman reports, we've probably had a few of those in the last couple of days, so it should be all clear. We'll go and plan, we'll go to 9 reports and item 1. Bruce, is that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I kick off, I just put a bit of information, basically breaking the consent managers on leave this week, so we have Mr. Peter West giving into the consent report. It's the next item on the agenda. Moving on to item 1, this is progressing out of the Council at the August 2023 council meeting. It relates to the methodology that council has been using and proposes now to be for appointing hearing commissioners to hear resource consents. For quite some years, that decision as to appointment of hearing commissioners and panels has been made by the consents manager, myself and my predecessors. That's sort of been a practically expedient and fast way to do it, but some recent case law has highlighted some risk around that, where parties, particularly maybe disgruntled parties, have flagged concerns around the appointment process and the transparency aspects of that and how people were appointed to make these decisions. So following the August 2023 resolution, I will progress that to create a new policy to outline how appointments will be made in the future. A couple of key elements of that would be to seek to create greater transparency, so it's not one individual making a decision, and committee members or any other interested parties who want to have more visibility around how those decisions are made have the opportunity to do that. Second key point is to provide people with a great opportunity to participate in the decision-making process. And thirdly, obviously, to mitigate our legal risk around some of these decisions. As you're abundantly aware, when applications proceed to consent hearings and need panels, they tend to be the more complex and or controversial aspects of our decision making. 90% plus of the decisions get made at staff level and move through relatively smoothly. But when hearings are required, then quite often there's some strong feelings around the subject matter, and there can be some fairly intense scrutiny around the appointment process. And that has happened in other parts of New Zealand where there's been a challenge around whether the person was legally appointed. And Section 34A, subsection 1 of the RMA has a limit on sub-delegation. The way we've previously been doing that could have a level of risk attached to it. So as you'll see there, there's a suggested policy for your consideration. Another element of this to try and make things move practically reasonably smoothly would be to reduce the quorum of the regulatory committee from 4 to 3. So, for instance, hypothetically, if we had a scenario, say in January, when several councillors may not be as available as they would normally be, we can form a quorum more easily, and then the regulatory committee could make a decision around who was appointed. The policy itself has basically loosely based on a similar equivalent from Environment Canterbury, as mentioned in the report. There are some changes to that, they're all pretty minor. Just highlight that in the formatting process, there's some references there to sections 2 and section 5. Section 5 is the last section, but it's just I'll get it reformatted before it goes to council to make sure that the numbers that were originally there are back into that document. It's got lost through our process. But the see references to section 2 and section 5 and section 8 were in the draft, but sort of falling out of system a little bit. So I fixed that. So essentially that draft policy outlines the measures that would be taken into account when making appointments moving forward. It'd be on page 14 of your agenda, no problem achieving page 14. There's always a bit of a balancing act around forming decision-making panels because the costs of that fall on the consent applicants. And we sometimes, not often, but sometimes get some challenges around that, saying, why do you need 3 people when I've got to pay for 3 when I think you need 1? Ultimately, that decision rests with the appointing council, not with the applicant. But the applicant can challenge costs of the process further down the track. So there's a delicate balancing act between making sure the panel contains all the required perspectives and expertise that are needed to make an informed decision and not imposing undue cost on the applicant themselves. That's probably it, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
That's sort of good. I do should duly note we've got 3 more got there, good, making good decisions around the table. So that was good to see. Yeah, Linda, you've got a question.
Just wanted to clarify that the change to the quorum is for the committee as a whole, not just for when they're making decisions about consent hearing panels. So that
and this committee doesn't have the delegated power to change the quorum. So the committee is comfortable with that recommendation.
but it would be an enduring 3 rather than 4 for the quorum, not just for when they're making those. Yeah, thanks.
Reminders.
Mr. Chairman, there's a little related to that, and that we currently we've got Councillor Clark, South and Paul Holst, and Councillor Morrison. So we, Eric's book himself, we wouldn't be able to be on the committee when such a decision was being made, would we? We would need to be, we wouldn't need to have any part of that. We would need to make sure that there was no bias or anything in that reason.
Yes, Chairman, yeah, that's would be correct. If you had a desire to be on the decision-making panel, then it wouldn't really be appropriate to be on the panel that decides who the panel is. Not a very good way of putting it, but yes, you're quite right.
Would
But
the,
if you didn't want to be on the decision-making panel, that would seem, just because you have the qualification, wouldn't necessarily preclude you from being part of the.
And can I just add, sorry, and presumably, Bruce, staff would be providing a recommendation to the committee around the makeup, proposal around the makeup of the panel and suitable expertise and to help guide the decision. Yeah.
For example, just to expand on that a little bit, sometimes if there's particular sensitivity around female concerns or something like that, we seek to get a Maori's perspective on decision making, or if there was a particular racial process issue, we might seek to get that representatives to make use of the making good decisions, qualifications that they've obtained, and also to provide some opportunity for local decision making, as I've said in the report.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. It's more transparency and actually it will offer opportunities for people who have actually done that making good decisions, of course, to be able to use that skill. While Morris has raised a valid point, I would look in the early stages of it, and unless it was unless the decision was as the chair, he probably up until that stage when you're only talking about how many people as we're going to get one independent, as we're going to be a couple of councillors, you probably still find it would be if the next discussion was, do we use one of our own chairman trained at that stage that you should be confident. So I think this is a good step. It's more transparent. I think it's not to see the wrong in the past of making decisions almost at the regulatory committee when you first came on, was to almost going too far the other way. So I think the transparency and the confidence of the public, I think what's outlined here is good.
Question, but for now, 4 down to 3 quorum around here. Did you see any scenarios that we don't have 3 to be able to, you know, just like if there is a competitor, well, not competitor, but a lot of parent commissioners. I mean, we're going through those numbers. I don't, you know, you always look at the worst case. Well, actually, everybody's got a conflict trying to wanting to be involved in a. I haven't got making good decisions, so I won't be there. But it'll be hopefully there'll be at least 2 others that will be involved. I'm just looking at it from a point that there's a few things going on in the future.
We can come in by Zoom.
You could do. I've taken some legal advice on that. Ideally, like that does happen in your other meetings quite regularly. I guess if we're trying to provide for greater public transparency, then we'd certainly want to ideally get those physical meetings as the default. But there may be instances where not everybody can make it in person, and if that was the case, we'd make sure that any committee meeting as it normally is live streamed, so there's that opportunity for the public to see the dialogue, etc. So I think we might end up with a hybrid model. But I'll keep a preference to try and have a physical meeting that if anyone wanted to physically observe, they had the opportunity to do so.
And I think to the chair's point around the makeup of the regional regulatory committee of our councils that have the good decision making qualification versus councils that don't, would that equate to 3 that you would always have the quorum? I think it's
Yeah, I was just making sure we have 3 that can actually make a decision. Because if they're vying for it to be.
And as chair now, I don't sit on any of those committees, so
Okay.
there's a couple of us there, and if there's an urgent thing, I'm sure staff would.
Yeah, I think probably know where we're going. All good.
Just another point to that. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question there.
No.
Right, I think if you've got a scenario, for example, hypothetically, there's a very high profile, really interesting matter that all the committee members who had the making good decisions qualification potentially wanted to be part of. So you then couldn't find an objective quorum for this committee, and then I think you just have to refer to the full council.
Well, that's the same. Can we do? We could do that. That brings everyone. That's what I was just saying. So we've got plan B there. So okay, we're able to have the team. Just Peter and then Morris. We might.
I think it's quite a good idea with the quorum. I think for me, it would pass the front page test with being more nimble and reactive. See something you see in front of us, really good example about around the Christmas time and the time. So I think that's really good. And just the thing with their making good decisions training, you guys have gone through it. I haven't. But we need, it's like any type of training, you need to get on the field and put it through. That's something we need to encourage and use the people that have got those skills. It doesn't have to be in the most high profile thing in itself, but just keep building on that expertise. We really need to go out of the way to use that and build on that training that's been done.
Yeah, through in the last couple of years, we've been at the growth period, Councillor Ludlow was part of that, and we had one before that, Warren Farms, and Councillor Cox was part of it.
All good, Morris.
The making a decision as to who would be appropriate person on the panel. Would this committee get information about their skills and experience?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, we'd have to make a credible and sensible recommendation to the committee as to who should be appointed and why they should be appointed. And if it was somebody who needed some specific technical expertise or a specific perspective, then we'd need to outline who that person was and why they are appropriate to be appointed. The committee would retain the discretion to disagree with that if they wanted to.
So should the people that do have the qualifications send to you, say their other qualifications, their technical expertise in some area or something like that, that could be relevant?
You're happy to do that, that could be useful.
On file. That's all good. I think we're all there. In regards, so I've got the 3 recommendations. If someone wants to.
Have you moved, Mr. Chairman?
Or second it, Peter, all in favour say aye. Against, carried. Item 2. Consents division report. How are you? It's good.
I didn't draft this, but I'm here to speak to it as much as I can.
You happy to?
Just answer questions, really.
Yep. Well, has anybody got any questions in regards to that? Or is there anything that you want to point out, or you're obviously just wanting to ask questions? I'm just making sure. Sorry, I'm going through my.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I could, if that was all right.
Yep, Morris.
It really relates to the change of government, and we all know that the incumbent now has made some statements about that. The Act, the Natural Built Environment Act. So that's likely to make some changes to all of this. We think, although the existing RMA still continues, I know. Do you anticipate any major issues in that regard?
We really can't tell until someone comes out. Usually could withdraw the NDE. We're still working on the RMA for the air processes anyway. They did make changes to the RMA when they brought the NDE in. So as discussed in this report, one of them that's a bit of concern to us is the 5 years after the plan comes in, limit on consent durations, which is a bit vague. We can't anticipate what the new government's going to do. They've, as you say, they've made some statements. Until there's action, we can't really tell you much about what's happening.
Right, so we just carry on as normal until some formal changes are made.
I can add to that. Obviously, I think it would be a view on things is that there is, the government has stated that maybe the government we're going to have has stated certainly around regulation and things that could be changes, but it's actually, it wouldn't do any harm. I would have thought that the council could actually put down a document just for the point of clarification on some of the issues we've seen. We'd like to actually bring in the next government can actually see some of the issues maybe we've been dealing with. So, because it's about the information that they know where there may be a few issues. I think it'd be quite important from us as a council to be front footing some of that stuff. So when they are having a look at things and trying to tweak things and trying to do what they promised and things that we need to be in the discussion. But that's my own point of view. Nicole and Peter.
Well, just on that issue, the regional sector are preparing a briefing paper for the incoming government. But whether there may be certain specific things that aren't there, but we'll obviously get to see what is in that briefing paper. Well, not a question, but if you want to stop it, I'll wait.
No, I actually have some views, please. But I don't want to miss you.
Just to answer what you and we pay what's in front of us, I think. And basically, if it's taken 7 years to get to these new acts from the previous government, probably years to get something developed. I don't know what's in front of us.
I suppose it's just to add to that, there's probably, when you're looking at work, you know, you're talking about workforce and that, there's certainly not big pots of money there to get all this stuff done. So you don't want to be going down a road where all of a sudden there's a dead end there. The government says change the rules. So money's pretty valuable and workloads and all this. So we want to make sure we're actually going the right direction. But that's what I was sort of indicating, just to heads up first.
Good points being made here, and while we play lots of cricket, sometimes you can sort of see how the game is likely to play out and sort of plan accordingly. And there's certainly been some, reasonably definitive statements made by some parties around what they would like to see happen. On a positive note, we have got a new position, not within the ICM group, but within Lucy Hicks's team, filled by Marcus Roy, who's got a new focus on government policy and trying to make sure that we are being creative in that space and having the opportunity for inputs as they arise. As you're well aware, there's been a bit of a tsunami of change in the last 3 or 4 years, and having that position that's able to focus a bit more on that, and with input from my new role and others to help us feed in our perspectives into those processes, because normally it just doesn't change like from one day to the next. You have at least some window of opportunity to provide some input or perspectives from a Southern region point of view. So I think it's positive that we've got this new role that Marcus is filling, who can sort of really focus on getting some input when we have the opportunity, because quite often it is quite brief.
I was quite surprised to see the number of applications for intensive wood raising. Is that human, or will it be another 60 for other den community activities, or consent?
I believe that to be cumulative. We haven't had a lot really. Bruce was manager.
Yeah, I could probably answer that a little bit, and probably just draw another couple of things to your attention too, if you don't mind. I'm not trying to steal Steve's thunder here, but it's just sort of trosses between the two managers. He normally knows way more than I do, so I don't normally try and steal his thunder by any means. But yeah, that is a cumulative number of the 60, and while it's not a lot, it's probably the second highest along we're of any of the regions around New Zealand. So I think the numbers of nationally of projected applications never quite panned out that way. So it will be interesting to see where that sort of regulatory space progresses over the next year or so. I was just also going to draw your attention to the bottom of page 17 to a couple of the legal processes that we are involved with. Because it's come up in a few of the previous reports, I just draw your attention to the Otahu and the application, which you've had some previous information on. The applicant has appealed the EPA decision to the High Court, and they've also lodged a judicial review on that decision. So Environment Southland had an opportunity to participate in that process. So we had a pretty narrow window of opportunity to lodge a notice of interest in it, which is all we've done. It's a pretty bland type notice. It hasn't said anything more than the fact that we have an interest in that matter, and we have lodged that notice following consultation with the Chief Executive. Second element is Cable Grove Limited. There was a hearing which I mentioned earlier for a new dairy farm located east of Forest Hill, and after a hearing, that application was declined and there has been an appeal lodged. So we're awaiting the next steps on that application.
No, that's all good.
That's too.
Sorry.
That now has gone to the EPA too, isn't it?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. You'll recall when I gave a recent briefing to the councillors, that decision had not been made, but Contact has now confirmed that it is intended to go down the EPA fast track process. And their intention is to lodge an application probably towards the end of this year, no later than mid-January next year. There is a time frame for that. There's a 6-month sort of drying clause under the RMA for the COVID-19 fast track provisions, which I think from memory is the 11th of January. And while there's a new process under the NBA, which is somewhat similar and does provide for renewable energy, the application has been lodged through the current process. So my understanding is the intention is to lodge pre-Christmas, and we have a further dialogue occurring with Contact representatives on early November on that.
Yeah, so that means our involvement in it will be a lot less, I suppose, so that will lighten the workload a wee bit. I guess that's what I was getting.
Yes, we have a couple of opportunities to feed in environment itself as perspectives into the decision-making process, and they are quite quick. Usually that's like 10 working days to do it. So we've sort of got to get our thoughts together in advance on that. There may be, depending on how the panel process plays out, an opportunity for either Environment Southland and or Southland District Council to nominate a representative on the decision-making panel, which we had an opportunity to do for Hananui. Hananui was a Environment Southland or a regional council only application. This needs regional and district consent, so I'm not sure how that will play out.
I just wondered if it just to highlight individual activities, just to highlight the 117 applications lodged, really quite a big number, 136 decisions made, but most important is bullet point 3, 100% compliance timeframes with the statutory timeframes, which is just acknowledging that the team's working really hard to be 100% compliant in terms of statutory timeframes is a real credit to the team.
That's all good. There's no further questions. There's someone want to recommend to proceed the report. I take that. Yep. Someone want to move that? Thank you, Alistair. All in favour, say aye. Against, carry. Right, move on to item 3. Conservation order. Good.
Okay, so we've got John Rule online. You'll take us.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm standing in for myself and Bianca, who was in Gisborne. Well done, her. I guess on the assumption that you're across the paper, 3 things. We're still completing the modelling on a consent by consent basis to ensure that we can achieve compliance with the approach we now have. We are roughly around break even, but every now and then there's a hiccup in the calculation for an individual consent, and we've still got to work through a couple. In terms of the approach we're taking, we haven't had the conversations with the individual consent holders where there's going to be some additional change required, but at the moment we're working on the basis that what we're seeing is that their maximum usage will not be constrained in the approach that we're taking, and therefore minimal, if any, impact on their business in reality. So we've had a very collaborative process, and the steering group have really stepped up and stayed on side through a few hiccups in the last few weeks, which has been pleasing. We have been consulting with iwi and Fish and Game, obviously Fish and Game because they applied for the water conservation order in the first place, and iwi. We are looking to catch up with them again because a bit happened since the last time we spoke to them and haven't done that yet. So that's where we're at. We believe, and we might have believed this some time ago, we're pretty close to the end, but there is work to do in talking particularly to individual consent holders. Happy for questions or any other commentary you want.
Yeah, I have a question, Don, just in regards to this. Obviously with the iwi, so iwi and Fish and Game they've obviously been kept in the loop of what's been going on, I take it, and that.
Yep.
And I was just reading that there's not going to be too, like they've viewed their point, so to speak, so that we've been dealing with those points way through, so you don't see too many problems ahead.
Well, it would be presumptuous to assume that, but we haven't had any feedback that has said there's rising concern or any particular concerns, but we need to obviously have another catch up with them and work that through. We don't see, there are obviously remaining risks because you can never be certain, but we don't consider any of them particularly high risks at this point.
Okay, oh, that's good. Hang on, Morris, sorry, Peter, and then Morris, and then Nichols, sorry.
Yeah, Don, Peter here. I'm really interested in the process and the success that you seem to be having in this project. Under difficult circumstances. I hope you're documenting the process well, that we could scale it up somehow and take some learnings away from that, from the bigger picture through our catchments.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. We can do that and happy to do that. I think also the steering group have said that they would be interested in talking to council about how they've found the process, because it's all very well us telling you how we think it worked. The really challenging bit, Peter, is that it's about people, you know, and you have ups and downs and positives and negatives, and when you think you're going forward, suddenly something goes wrong and you go backwards. So you need, to me, the underlying belief that you need is it's the right thing to do and it will have a good outcome in the end without being certain what the outcome will be. And therefore you stay true to the course as you work through the process, if you like. You just keep going, well, we've had a bit of a setback, but we're going to continue to push forward. And I think it's worked. I think the word of caution I would give you is, you need people that have the resilience to cope with some fairly negative feedback at times and still continue forward. But also it's not a cheap process. It's because you don't have one or two meetings and everybody goes, oh, well, we've got it out of our system and we'll move on now. You've got a situation where you've got to go through a whole lot of forward, backwards, sideways type movement to build trust, if you like, starting open from a point where there is very little.
Thanks. Maurice?
Does that answer the question, Peter? I don't know.
Yeah, it did, Don, and look, I welcome that opportunity you mentioned around the steering group to come and talk to us, if that's possible.
Well, that's up to them, but they've indicated they wish to, but that's, you know.
Thank you, Don.
Maurice?
Oh, yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I've sort of had a conflict here in that I was working for Fish and Game when they applied for the conservation order back in the mid-1980s. And I gave evidence at the tribunal in support of the conservation order. But at that time, we didn't actually realise that there was a whole lot of groundwater connected to the surface water. So we were only thinking about surface water. And it wasn't until later on that we discovered through the works of Bryden Hughes mainly that the groundwater and the river were really all the same thing. So that was very interesting. But what I wanted to know is whether or not the review that's been done by Panel Delamore and Partners is a publicly available document.
At the moment, I'm presuming Paul can probably answer that in terms of any papers that they've provided, but in terms of where we're at the moment, we haven't made anything available because it's still evolving. So we're trying to get the spreadsheet and the data exactly right so that there's not a hiccup somewhere along the way. But Paul, I'll pass over to you in terms of what's available, etc.
Yeah, because my understanding is because it's still a working document. It's not able, because it needs to be refined and finalised. So it's a working document, but ultimately everything will be public at once that's concluded. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Don. I see you're saying it looks like it's still a paper over allocation, and so after that last hiccup, how have you solved that? Is it more days, a wider spread to be able to have their application, or has obviously been?
I was afraid you were going to ask that. I'm not a hydrogeologist and a planner, so I get a bit careful. The proposed plan assumes that the rate of take applies over a 90-day period. We've taken legal advice that there is a way to better reflect the reality of the impact on the river by allocating takes over 45-day chunks of time, which reduces the rate of take for those consent holders who don't use it within the 90-day period, if that's the right way of putting it. Nicole, I'm showing my ignorance of the specifics of explaining the terminology, but we have taken legal advice, and obviously it's a pity Steve's left, actually, because he's been directly involved in the process around how to assess the rate of takeover across a period of time. The 90 days artificially increases the impact on the river for some consent holders, is a better way of putting it.
That we probably need,
Yeah, I think that's good. I think what I'm getting is
without putting Don in a position to.
shorter period means that
Qualifications.
yeah, my application for the when it doesn't rain and
Yeah,
opens the window a wee bit, and if you haven't used it, you move on to the next.
and the reality is that this is a paper over allocation. We've looked back through history, and there's never been a year in which the collective of consent holders have exceeded, in terms of actual use, the limits of the water conservation order, but we have to resolve the paper over allocation. It is not legal for that to be the situation.
Theory.
Yeah, well, that's the important, well, it is actually one of the important that they haven't been, hasn't been actually been used as such, so, but look, no, that's good, Don. I think if everybody's happy with that, we'll, it's a recommendation to receive the report, and hopefully we'll hear some good news in the near future of that, you'll be able to retire.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Can I have some mover and a seconder, please? Nicole, Morris, second it, all in favour, say aye. Against, carry, right.
Thank you. I shall leave.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah.
Thanks. Item 4, Alistair will be coming back in.
Yeah, I can speak to
Are
that.
you're looking after this?
Yeah, I can do that. So this is your group programme update. We will be looking to provide the next set of additional reports or outside of just substantive reports. Just one thing for clarification, we haven't brought, we will be bringing the annuals. Don, I wonder if you want to come to the table and just if there's any questions. The annual CME report is scheduled to go to full council, so it won't come to the regulatory committee, but it will come to the full council. So that will be, I think the next council meeting is in. Yeah, so that's it. That's the intention of that, and then some of the other things will loop around again. So we'll probably get. We'll be working to do the Donna will be the Ministry for the Environment. What's the name of the report?
So through Mr. Chair, the National Monitoring Standards, which we report to the MFE each year, that's due to come out in around January, February, and our CME metrics, which is all the regional councils, is in draft form at the moment and due for release in public release in about a month's time.
Okay, good.
Okay, so you'll by the next regional services regulatory committee, sorry, there'll be an updated next sort of 6 months ahead. So we'll be and through the chair we'll be seeing if there's any topics that you would like us to bring forward in the next time frame. So that's just that update.
Good. Is any questions here? Morris? One.
Why this is called the group program update. Normally the group refers to Southport in our annual meeting.
Oh.
So it could be a little bit of confusion. I thought it'd be better if it was called the Integrated Catchment Management Group Work Program or something like that, just to avoid any confusion there. But I wonder why that Integrated Catchment Management is here rather than the compliance division.
Yeah.
It's just ignorance on my part.
No, it is this is a regulatory committee, but how we work into, I suppose, how we integrate compliance with some of our wider work. So this allows the regulatory committee to see that how that regulatory arm works in conjunction with our non-regulatory work as well. So it provides a broader perspective of the work that we do. We have a similar report that goes to the Regional Services Committee, which also weaves in some of the regulatory components. Yeah.
Well, that's why when I was reading this, I thought that's really that. Now you explain it next time.
So would you like to change the title?
We can
Well,
You're
absolutely.
going to have a look at the title. We'll duly note that if,
And
just in case there's any confusion, Morris, we don't want you on the wrong page.
if you and just to give an illustration of the way intensive winter grazing obviously has a regulatory component to the certain part of the year, but also has a non-regulatory component. So we just want to make sure that both committees have that full story. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's all good, and no other questions. We'd like to move that. Receive that report and second Nicole, yeah, with the change. Yes. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Right, item 5. Welcome, Ellie. Biosecurity regulatory. What were yours?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Well, Morris.
Oh, resist.
And I.
The Marine Pathways Plan, that you've seen a lot of people applied for certificates or passes. What? How do we know the number of people that go in there without getting a pass?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we don't know what we don't know, but we do run the compliance trips every year. When we stop boats, and when we come across boats in the fjords, we always check if they've got a clean vessel pass. Most of the time, they have them. The exception is trailer boats. So we do have relatively low compliance trailer boats, but there are much higher risks than the boats that are. So that's an area where we do need to improve communication, and that was really obvious through the boat show that need to improve on that. And last year, remember, we did Milford for the first time, and we had quite low compliance with commercial operators. We will go back into Milford this year, and hopefully that will improve. Now
There's coordination throughout the country, isn't there? Other regions have got similar programs, so that we're people moving from Nelson to here, for example, are all aware of the need for them.
we do try and advertise on all the marinas and things throughout the country, and in national boating magazines and things like that. The Biosecurity New Zealand, so MPI, are working on a national campaign for clean water as well. So to get that messaging, all out to make it clean. And we are, some of the northern councils have got a marine vessel portal where all of the information about each vessel can be stored in terms of biosecurity, and we're looking at joining that portal so that we will get up-to-date information from all of the other councils as to whether boats are clean or not. And something we're investigating at the moment.
Good. Okay, any other questions? Yes, if not. I'll ask for some of the move to receive the report. Alistair and Marshall, second it, all in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you for that, Ellie. And if there's no further, hang on, I'll just check my agenda. Sorry, extraordinary business, which I don't know of any, and no public excluded business. We'll shut it down. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much.
He's going to be a tight trip.